Hey everyone, this is Pat Mesiti, and I'm so excited today. Some of you say, well, Pat, you're always excited, but today in particular, because we are really, really honored today to have an outstanding author, speaker, Dr. Justin Coulson, PhD, psychology degrees, and here's the amazing thing, a father of 6 females. And his book, Misconnection, is just amazing. And I know many of you have said to me, Pat, can you get someone on into our community that can really help us with our families, with our children, with our teens? So your prayers are answered. And welcome to Dr. Justin Coulson. Thanks for being on the program, Justin.
Yeah, Pat, thanks so much for having me. It's a delight to be able to spend some time with you.
Justin, tell us a little bit about yourself and what brought you to being a psychologist and teaching about families. What was it? And I always love hearing where people started and why they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah, sure. I really appreciate the opportunity. Now I've got to do a quick clarification. I'm not allowed to use the term psychologist. I do have a PhD in psychology, but because I'm not a registered psych and it's a protected label, it's just something that I have to put out there. But I've got a PhD in psychology. We'll get to that in a sec. So essentially, I grew up like any kid, being a punk, rebel, annoying disappointment to his parents. I was that teenage boy that you just don't want to have. I mean, I don't think I did anything particularly bad, but I certainly wasn't doing anything particularly good either. Once I finished school, though, I went and did a little bit of volunteer work with my church, and then came home and got into the radio industry, and I spent nearly a decade as a radio DJ. In my late 20s, my wife, Kylie, and I had 2 children, a 3-nager and a newborn baby. And I just found myself completely out of my depth. Now, I reckon this is pretty normal for most parents, and especially dads. I mean, I know a lot of mums say that they just sort of mold themselves into the role, and maybe there's something maternal in there. I don't know. I know a lot of mums struggle as well. But as a dad, I was clueless. Not only was I clueless, but I think I was actually unhelpful, maybe even harmful. And I reckon, I don't know, it was a Saturday afternoon. I'd been at work all morning. So I was working 6 days a week as a radio DJ for one of the biggest radio stations in the country. I was at Brisbane's B105, where we...
It sounds so radio-ish.
Yeah, where we played all of today's best music while you work. And I'd been out on the Friday night doing the whole radio DJ thing, doing some publicity somewhere, gotten home at some ridiculous hour of the early morning, had 2 or 3 hours sleep, and then gone to the radio station on Saturday. I've done this 6-hour shift, gotten home at about 1 p.m. and I'm just, you know what it's like on those days where you've completely wiped yourself out. I'm not a drinker. There's no alcohol involved. I was just exhausted from late nights and early mornings and not enough sleep. I said to my wife, Kylie, honey, I'm shattered. I just need to have a nap. And then I'll be good for the rest of the afternoon, and I can be with you and the kids, and we'll have a nice family afternoon. She said, well, that's all well and good, but I need to go out. The baby's just gone to sleep. The 3-year-old, she's due for a nap in the next 15 or 20 minutes. So I'm going to go. You put her down. And when I get back, well, I should be back before the baby wakes up, and I'll get you up and we can, have a nice afternoon then. I said, no worries. That'll be fine. Famous last words, right?
This story's not going to end well.
And unfortunately, I wish I could laugh about how it ends, but it's one of the great regrets of my life. That afternoon, when you're exhausted and you're not thinking rationally, and you're kind of easily triggered and easily explosive. So my daughter, I've said to her, it's time to go to bed. And like any self-respecting 3-year-old who thinks she's too big for a daytime nap, she told me no. And we saw this escalation where she got madder and madder at me for telling her to go to sleep, and I got madder and madder at her for telling me that she wasn't going to go to sleep, because for goodness sakes, I'm your father and you'll do as I say. And it just got worse and worse, Pat, until eventually, and I won't go into graphic detail, but I yelled at her and I threatened her and I called her names and I smacked her and I banished her to her room. And at one point I lifted her up over my head and I was squeezing her and I slammed her down onto the bed. I was so angry, on the mattress. And in the end, I was standing at the door holding onto the handle as she laid behind the door in her room, using her heels as hammers against the door, screaming, let me out, I'm not tired. And the baby fortunately somehow stayed asleep through all of this racket, and it was terrible. And it lasted for a long time. It must have been 15, 20 minutes of just this toddler screaming and a dad completely out of his depth screaming back. But I remember holding onto the door handle, and Pat, I had this thought: it's not my fault. She made me do it. If she would have just done it, she was told, none of this would have happened. And I don't know if you've ever had that experience where, when you're really emotional and you really believe that you're thinking clearly and you're very intelligent in that moment and you know exactly how things are. Well, that's where I was. But you've also know that as your emotions drop down, your intelligence actually returns, and you realize that perhaps you weren't smart as you were. And it occurred to me while I was still holding the door, and she started to eventually fall asleep on the carpet behind the door. Hang on, she's a toddler and she's behaving like one. You're an adult. What are you behaving like? And it really rattled me. Wow. So once I knew that she'd calmed down on the carpet, I walked into the backyard. I wasn't going to go to sleep now. I mean, my head was not in a sleepy state anymore. It's hard to go to sleep when you're cranky and you've got all those endorphins and stress hormones rushing around your body. And I stood in the backyard as the warm Queensland sun sort of landed on my arms and my skin, and started to think about what had just happened. And I remember I distinctly had a specific thought. I thought to myself in the third person, Justin, you're a bad father. You're a bad father. And I didn't like what I was thinking. And as I tried to reconcile who I wanted to be with who I was and what had just happened with my 3-year-old, across the back fence and a few doors down in a neighboring street, I pretty much heard what had just occurred replayed, with a dad and a toddler screaming at each other in this awful power play because the toddler wanted something and the dad wanted something else, and it sounded just awful. And I knew that's what I'd just been through with my own child, and I thought, oh my goodness, what am I doing? And so that afternoon, I sat down with my wife, and she arrived home and was surprised to see me awake. The other the two kids were still asleep, and I was really, really clear and honest with her about what had happened. I just said, I need to do something about this. And the decision that I made was that I was going to quit my radio career, go back to school, do a psychology degree, and learn how to dad. I decided there was something about the conversation that helped me to realize that no matter how successful I might be in any other sphere, no matter how many backstage passes I got, no matter how many global celebrities I got to hang out with or interview in the studio, none of that mattered if I didn't have a family or if I didn't have the love and respect for my children and my wife.
I love the name of your organization, Happy Families, because that's the goal of everyone. No one wants to live in a miserable one. Matter of fact, on Sunday, I have an inspirational show that I do, and I spoke on fathering, and I said a couple of things about fathering. Number one, fathering is painful. Number two, even though you can be physically distant, you've got to be emotionally connected. And number three, fathering is also a responsibility. Why do you think, Justin, there's such a disconnect? Parents say to the kids, well, when I was your age, and I want to say, you never were their age. They live in a completely different world, different culture, everything. Why do you think there's so much angst and frustration in parents and coming back to them from their teenage, especially teenage daughters? Why do you think that is, Justin?
Yeah, well, I want to give as much credit as I can to parents, the parents that I encounter every day, whether it's through social media or through one-on-one conversations or any number of other ways that I work with parents. They're well-intentioned and they're doing the best that they can, and they really want the best for their children. But there does often seem to be a disconnect. I mean, look, if I can be absolutely shameless about it, the book.
Don't promote it. This is why I want you on the program.
Well, the book is called Misconnection, because it's not so much that there's a disconnect, it's that there's a misconnect. We're trying to connect with our kids, and they're trying to connect with us. They want to, and we want to, but I don't know, we just kind of miss. We kind of talk past each other. And when we say things like, yeah, I was your age once and I would never have spoken to my parents the way you speak to me, we're actually misconnecting, and too much misconnection will lead to a disconnection. But I reckon it happens for a couple of reasons. The first one is kind of really simple to say, but very hard to live. And that is that as adults, we've really forgotten what it's like to be a child, whether it's a 6-year-old or a 16-year-old. It's so hard to see the world through their eyes.
Yeah.
And when we can't put ourselves in their shoes and feel what they're feeling and really understand how it is for them, well, we're going to talk past each other a lot. It happens in couple relationships and it happens in parent-child relationships. It's just a tricky thing to do. I think the second thing is we're just living in a totally different world to what, our children are growing up in a 5G world with smartphones. They've got the world in their pocket, and it's totally different to what our experience was. So we kind of don't get what it's like to have Netflix on demand. And when I was a kid, Pat, I used to have to sit there and wait till Friday night rolled around so that I could see the next episode of Beverly Hills 90210. I got to see one episode a week. That was it. And now kids get to binge watch an entire series in a weekend if they want. I mean, the whole world's turned upside down. So different expectations. Oh, and let me add a third one. I reckon that there's more pressure on our kids today than ever before. We have higher expectations. A lot of parents sort of say to me, I don't want my kids to be perfect. I just want them to stop making mistakes. You know what I mean? And so we expect something from our children.
Yeah. How do you raise? I've got 3 daughters, and they're all strong. How do you raise strong women without being defiant, or boys for that matter? I suppose I'm like you. I lean towards girls because I got girls. But how do we raise strong people and not defiant, especially when they got all this rap music and the social media and all of it just at them all the time? How does a parent, do that without breaking the spirit of a child?
Yeah. I'd love to share a story. It's a story that I shared in my TED talk a couple of years ago in Melbourne. And I think that it kind of sets up a really, really interesting answer to your question. It's a slightly longer story, but the payoff is worth it. So many, many years ago in the 1960s, a guy by the name of Stanley Milgram did some experiments at Yale University in the United States, and he shocked the world. He discovered that he could ask people to give electric shocks to other participants in a study to the extent that they would actually pass out or die, the person receiving the shock. And the people giving the shock, these participants in his study, would keep on shocking them even once they were unconscious or dead. Now, a little bit of detail around this. The people that came in for the study really believed that they were shocking somebody, maybe even to death, but they were actually not giving any electric shocks. And the person who was receiving the supposed shocks was an actor. And Milgram hired an actor to play the role of the professor as well. And essentially, this actor was saying, you need to continue this experiment. The poor person, you or me in the study, we're giving these electric shocks, and the actor in the other room getting the shocks is going, I don't know the answer, don't shock me again. And then we give them a shock because they don't know the answer. I'm very quickly summarizing a very big story, but if you want to know more about that, just Google Stanley Milgram electric shocks and you'll get everything you need to know. Highly unethical experiment. But a few years ago, probably when I first, actually it's probably nearly a decade ago, when I first started giving talks publicly, I got a phone call from a church group. They said, look, we're doing a big conference. We're going to have about 1,200 young kids from 14 to 18, and we want you to talk to them about making good decisions. You'll have 6 groups of 200. Just give the same talk 6 times across the day, 1 hour each talk. I said, yeah, no worries. That sounds great. I was thinking about what I could talk to them about, and I thought, I know. I'm going to do the Milgram experiment. I'm going to get them to give each other electric shocks, basically, and see if they'll do it because I'm telling them to do it even though it hurts somebody else. I'm thinking this is going to be epic. I didn't really think through the ethics of it tremendously, Pat, and I was young and enthusiastic, and I've certainly learnt my lesson. But I rang a friend of mine, Gino. He's an electrician, Italian guy. I said, Gino, I need some help. Could you build me an electric shock machine? He paused and said, yeah, I probably could. What do you want an electric shock machine for? I said, well, and I explained what I was going to do with these kids. I was going to get a couple of volunteers to come up. One of them was going to ask some trivia questions. The other one, if they couldn't answer it, they were going to get these electric shocks. And he said, Justin, he started laughing. He said, I could build that for you, but I'm not going to. That's not okay. You can't go giving kids electric shocks.
Yeah.
I thought, yeah, fair enough. He's got a point. I'll listen to Gino. So then I had another idea. I thought, well, I can do something much more ethical. I can get the two volunteers to come up to the front of the room. I'm going to give one of them the trivia questions to ask the other one. The other one's going to put some elastic bands around their wrist. And every time they get a question wrong, the experimenter gets to pull the elastic bands out and slap them against the wrist of the kid that got the wrong answer. So as you can tell, it's much more ethical, Pat. I don't know. Now, I need to emphasize, I learned some important lessons when I did this, and I would never do it again. And if you're a person listening to this who works with young people, please don't ever do this. It's totally wrong. I shouldn't have done it. But I share this story because of what happened. So the first 200 kids comes into the room, and I say, all right, guys, we're going to start off with an activity. I need 2 volunteers. And so 2 people put up their hands, say, pick me, pick me. In fact, about 100 of them did. But I picked 2 of them, and they came up, and one of them put the elastic bands around their wrist. The other one asked a trivia question. The kid didn't know the answer. So he pulled the elastic bands out and slapped them against the wrist. 5 questions, 5 big slaps. This poor kid walks away holding their wrist going, oh, that really hurt. I thought, oh, I'm wondering now if that was such a good idea. Anyway, the second group had exactly the same experience. And I thought, oh, gee, I'm starting to question my wisdom here. I maybe shouldn't have done this. You know, the thing is, with a church group, you can kind of get away with it. You could never do it in a school.
No,
yeah. Now, again, please don't get any ideas, anyone that works with young people. It's not a good idea. I should not have done it, and nor should you. But anyway, the third group came in, and I was wondering if I should continue or if I should give it up, because this wasn't a good thing that I was doing, and I was starting to feel that. But I thought, oh, look, I'll try one more time. Third time lucky. So I've asked for some volunteers. I picked this one over here, and I picked that one over there, and they've come forward. As they're coming forward, I picked a girl and a boy. The girl was, I think, about 16 years of age. She was probably 5'1". I mean, she was tiny, and she was this petite, gorgeous little girl. And the boy that I picked was a big Polynesian fella. He was, I think he said he was 14 years old. He had a really unusual name. His name was Tiankum. I've never forgotten the name. And Tiankum was, I think, about 6'4", 6'3", and probably weighed about 120 kilos. I mean, the kid looked like he should be a front rower for a rugby league team. He was massive. So anyway, I've given them the opportunity to choose who's going to have the elastic bands and who's not. And that was by having a couple of pieces of paper in my hand. I shook them up, and they chose, and they were assigned their roles. And while I'm shaking these pieces of paper and jumbling them up and waiting for the opportunity to see who's going to be who, I remember thinking to myself, please let the girl be the one that's going to be slapping the bands against his wrist and not the other way around. I was thinking, if he's going to do it to her, she's going to lose a hand. He's going to put the rubber bands, there aren't only rubber bands, but she's tiny and he's so big. Anyway, it comes out that she ends up putting the rubber bands around her wrist. And I think, oh no. So Pat, he asks the first question. She doesn't know the answer. He picks up her wrist. He pulls the rubber bands back. He's just about to let them go, and she flinches. And so very, very slowly and very carefully, he pauses, looks at me, and then gently places those rubber bands back on her wrist without any force, without any slap, just very, very careful, very tender. He lowers her hand to her side and steps back, says to me, I don't want to do that. And I thought, oh, well, this is interesting. So I said to him exactly what the experimenter in Milgram's study said. I said, well, Tiankum, the experiment requires that you continue. Now, please continue. Now, you think about it. You're a 14-year-old kid, and you've got this brother who's got the authority saying you need to continue. Please continue. There was a lot of pressure on this boy at that moment. He reached down, picked up her wrist, held the rubber bands, but this time he didn't even pull them back. He let go of her wrist and said, I don't think I should. I mean, she doesn't know the answer, but that doesn't mean that I should hurt her just because she can't answer the question. I said, well, that's really good of you. And I really regret this. But I said to him, I've got an entire group of your peers here. I've got 200 people. who are waiting for you to do this. You're here for an hour, and if you don't do this, I've got nothing to talk about with you all for the next hour. Now, the experiment requires that you continue. Continue, please. I mean, I got really firm with him, and I put a lot of pressure on him. And at the same time, the crowd started to say, do it, do it. You know, when the kids will go, do it, do it. I mean, it was hostile. Well, this kid's under pressure now. So much pressure in my heart. I was doing backflips. I was high-fiving him. I was thinking, this kid is amazing. He's just said no to me. He's doing the right thing. Yeah. But Pat, you know, to put that pressure on him, and I thought he's going to crack. In fact, a few of the boys over to my right put up their hand and said, we'll do it, we'll do it. Oh, they were excited about the idea of hurting her. But he stood firm. And then he shook his head, stepped away and said, I don't feel good about doing it. Now, he was respectful, he was polite, but he was firm and steadfast. He was just like, no, I'm not going to do it. And he started to walk back to his chair. I called him back. He didn't want to come back, but I said, mate, I need you to come back to Yankum, please. Come back and talk to me for a sec. And I asked the whole audience to give him a huge round of applause. So they're cheering. They don't even know why. They're going, hey! And I said, no. Let me tell you what happened in the last two groups. Now, let me tell you what happened in Stanley Milgram's study. Now, let me tell you what's happened with Yankum. He said no. And what he's done in saying no is simply extraordinary. He's been rebellious. He's done it in a respectful way because now, who was it that said it? I think it was Hippocrates who said, right is right, even if no one is doing it. Wrong is wrong, even if everyone is doing it.
Correct. Yeah.
So that's a long way of answering your question, but there's something his parents have done and something that's sunk in for him where he's realized that he knows who he is. He's got a sense of identity, a sense of purpose, a sense of value for himself and for others. He knows what his moral code is. He's got what I call moral courage. And I just love the way he was strong enough to say, I know who I am. I know what I stand for. What you're asking me to do is not consistent with who I am. And so I've got to say no to it. And that makes him simply extraordinary.